Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Eric with SweetSpotDFS, and welcome to my DFS preview for the 2022 Honda Classic. In this video, I'm going to go over everything you're going to need to know in order to find the optimal lineup this week. And of course, that means looking at the bucket system, tournament information, the golf course being used, as well as past optimal lineups. But before we get into any of that, I want to remind you guys I'm running some giveaways this week. The first being a subscriber giveaway. If you want a free entry into this giveaway, you got to be subscribed and you need to comment down below. Give me your favorite 10K golfer. And if we hit 320 subscribers by the end of the week, I will run this giveaway. If not, your entry for this week will go into next week's giveaway, which again will be for $20. Now, typically it's worth 10, but Joe Nicely won this 2 weeks ago. He decided to donate his $10 into the fund for everyone else. So if you want to pay him kindly, go subscribe to the Turn podcast or follow him on Twitter at Joe Nicely. I believe that's his Twitter handle, but a great follow nonetheless. The second giveaway that I'm doing is a PrizePicks giveaway. And basically all you need to do is sign up on PrizePicks if you haven't already. Use the promo code SweetSpot. There is a link in the description that will bring you to that site using that promo code. And then all you gotta do is put $20 in your account, and I'm going to gift you $20. So you're gonna play PrizePicks for free. And on top of that, they're going to match your deposit up to $100. So you don't have to just put $20 in, but if you wanna play PrizePicks for free, that's all you gotta do. So just put 20 in, I'll give you 20 back. PrizePicks will match that deposit of yours. You'll be playing with $40 in your account. As simple as that. So again, sign up using the promo code SweetSpot, you'll get 20 bucks. Again, link in the description below. Let's go ahead. Let's get into this now. And we're going to start with tournament information. Now, obviously, this is the Honda Classic. It's been established since 1972, and it's located in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, obviously. Now, nothing's really changed about this tournament for as long as I've had data, going back to 2013. Field size has been 144 players. The cut has changed, but that changed like 2-3 years ago from top 70 in ties to top 65 in ties. That's just your new standard on the PGA Tour, so there's nothing really new there. Average winning score -9, and your average cut score is +1. I think it's like +1.6 if I remember correctly. I'm just going to make it +1, but it's right in the middle of +1, +2, which means this golf course, or this tournament in general, is tough. And a large part of that has to do with the wind that comes through this golf course and just the golf course setup. There's a lot of water on this golf course, a lot of places where golfers can find trouble. Let's put it that way. And a big proponent of it again is the wind. Now, the strength of field is 224, which super weak compared to last week, which was 684 after the Fitzpatrick withdrawal. So to put this into even more context, the Palmetto Championship last year was 196 from my memory, and I believe the Corrales Punta Cana was like 124 or something like that. So this is in that neighborhood. It's not in the neighborhood of what we had last week, which I think if you look at past winners at this golf course, you see a lot of notable names like Justin Thomas, Sungjae Im, for instance. You also see some maybe not so notable names like Matt Jones, Keith Mitchell, things like that. I think the reason of volatility, at least just for long shots winning this tournament and all that stuff, has to do with the volatility, the tough conditions, and the low strength of field. I don't know what the average strength of field at this tournament is, but 224 is pretty low. The weather looks like it's going to be warm for the most part, 80 degrees both Thursday, Friday. I'm recording this on a Monday, so that obviously can change. I always advocate for you guys to go check the wind and the weather out Wednesday night or Thursday morning if you wake up early enough before lineup lock. Take a look at that before determining, what kind of lineup considerations you want to do, like AM, PM wave, or maybe showdown slates, or even PrizePicks. That's where weather can really come into. At least you can take advantage of the weather by looking at those types of things, or when you look at those types of contests, sorry. And the wind on Thursday is going to be a little bit stronger than it is on Friday, which will matter. I mean, if the wind is a little lighter in the morning, but heavier in the afternoon, it might be worthwhile to probably play a little bit more, like play more golfers from the morning wave Thursday than the afternoon wave. Now, I've done this for a long time. I can tell you right now, we're going to see a pretty even mix of AM and PM golfers inside the top 10 when all is said and done. So I don't think you really necessarily have to really, fade a certain, AM, PM wave. It's not really going to matter. I think this mostly affects showdown slates and any types of props or anything to that level on like a particular day, like a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, Sunday, that kind of thing. So either way, it's knowledge. It's not terrible to have. Definitely take it into consideration when playing those types of contests. Moving on. Golf course, PGA National Champion course. Again, I don't know how long it's been the host of the Honda Classic, but for as long as I've had my data, it has been. The architect is Tom Fazio and his son George. The one thing I know about Tom Fazio golf courses is the greens slope from back to front. Now, does that apply here? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Jack Nicklaus has redesigned this golf course several times. I don't know what that really means when it comes to redesign. I don't know if he did heavy changes to it or just slight changes. I don't think it really matters. But if you wanted those pieces of information for your own research purposes, there you go. Tom Fazio, Jack Nicklaus, you can look at whatever you want. I just don't think it's going to be a huge factor this week. The golf course is a par 70, 7,100 yards, Bermuda all over. But one kind of like concerning thing for me is it's showing the rough is overseeded with rye, which that doesn't make me feel super confident that the Bermuda grows very well at this location this time of the year. You wouldn't have overseed unless you were kind of concerned about how the grass is growing. That's usually what happens during the winter months at most southern golf courses. You switch from Bermuda to like a ryegrass or a bent or a POA. It's just weird. Now, like I said, they're 80-degree days, Thursday, Friday. And if that's been constant throughout the last month, maybe some of you guys don't know this about me, but I did go to school for golf course management. I had to take several agronomy classes in order to graduate with that diploma. Bermuda needs 55 degrees average soil temperature in order for Bermuda grass to grow. And you usually, if you don't know the soil temperature, you can usually read the air temperature as long as it's over 70 degrees on average throughout the day. And that doesn't mean 70 degrees constant. That means, in that 24-hour span, if your average temperature is 70 or above, Bermuda can grow pretty decently. We saw in the desert in California this not apply. Obviously, even in, what was the other one? Phoenix, same thing applied there too, where you had dormant Bermuda in the rough. That's because in the desert, there isn't a lot of humidity that traps the warm air down. It lets it escape into the atmosphere, meaning you have really cold nights and really cold mornings. That brings that average temperature down. And it also, can freeze the ground at times, which is not good for Bermuda. But here in Florida, I can see the Bermuda staying alive because it's a tropical climate. It's humid. The warm air will stay down even at nighttime. So I just don't get it. I don't understand why there's overseed rye. When Bermuda does get dormant or stops growing, it becomes brittle. The blades on the grass actually become narrower. They're not as thick. They're thinner, I should say. Which kind of like plays into Justin Thomas's remarks. I heard this in a podcast where he was saying, the Bermuda on these greens don't really react the same way as Bermuda does at like his home track or something like that, which, now you're really getting into the weeds of trying to figure out how prevalent the Bermuda is. I'll stop there and just say, I'll be using Bermuda stats, but I'm using average finishing positions because my database, well, first of all, I don't have a database up and running. And I don't use any of those sites like Fantasy National or anything like that. So I'm not going to be able to dig into like putting splits or anything like that. I think you can still do all that stuff just fine. If I was to put a weight on that model, it'd probably be less than what you normally do. Just throwing that out there. But I think most of your Bermuda guys are going to do well here. Which leads me to my next piece, shot shape. I have that right here. It's a little summary box. And if you guys don't recall, I actually used to go over this. I used to go hole by hole, give you my notes for the hole and what shot shape off the tee and approach I thought mattered at this golf course. I stopped doing it. It's too it takes up too much time, and also going hole by hole doesn't really matter. You know, whether I tell you, hey, on hole 1, any shot shape matters, what good is that going to do for you? You know, especially if I were to say most golfers hit iron off the tee. That's not going to matter. This is just one hole. Are you going to do this analysis for all 18 holes and try to determine which players match that profile the best? I mean, that's really going a little too in depth in my opinion. So I don't advocate for going hole by hole, but what I like to do is just show you the shot shape summary. Currently at this golf course, shot shape doesn't really matter. You did see when I had it up there that 4 of the last 6 holes did require a fade. Now, that is just to access the entire green. Some of those holes you really don't want to unless you're chasing for a win. Most of the time, you're just going to want to play the middle of the green, which means any shot shape is available. So if you take away those fades on the last 4 holes, you're pretty even, where it doesn't really matter whether you hit a draw or you hit a fade. So I wouldn't look too far into that. This actually leads me to another point, and I've heard this a couple times throughout different podcasts, and it's one of those things that I don't think anyone really understands. So what I'm getting at is like low ball flight hitters. 2 things you need to know with low ball flight hitters. One is either they don't hit the ball far enough for the ball to get in the air as much as like a Rory or a Bryson or anything like that. Or 2, they have a very high spinning drive that keeps the ball in the air, but at a lower trajectory. That's the only way. Well, first of all, those are the 2 types of low ball hitters. One, they just don't hit the ball very far to begin with. Those aren't very, in my opinion, they're not very high. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on this word. Potential. High potential golfers. Those that hit the ball further will have more potential than those that hit the ball shorter. Now you can, brainiac your way throughout most golf courses, and that's why golf is so great, because you can have different types of players. But when it comes to potential, the further you hit the ball, the more potential you're going to have. Just plain out, period. So with that being said, if say like Cameron Champ, he has a low ball flight, but he hits the ball miles. In order to keep his ball in the air, he needs to have more backspin. Otherwise, physics, the law of gravity and everything else that goes along with physics, will bring that ball out of the air faster than if he were to hit the ball at a higher trajectory. Meaning he would need a fast and firm golf course, like fairway or from tee to green, in order for his ball to continue to roll out. Otherwise, his carry distance isn't going to be as great as other golfers. And then his rollout, that's what he's primarily going to have to rely on, is that rollout. If that's not there, he's not hitting the ball very far. Now, I'm not just picking on Cam Champ because of that. I think he hits the ball plenty hard and he hits it plenty high, that it's not like that. So if you're concerned about hitting the ball low, well, first of all, what are you really looking at? Like, most of your low ball hitters are going to be your Ches Reeves, Matt Kuchars, those types of people that work, because they just don't hit the ball very far. And when speaking of just hitting the ball low, your high ball hitters can club up and swing less to hit the ball just as far as they normally would, but at a lower trajectory. So when it comes to looking at Apex, I just wouldn't look at it, period. It's not going to do you any justice whatsoever. And having a normal low ball flight isn't always good. Like, you have to understand the golf course you're at. You have to understand the conditions of why they're hitting the ball low. You have to understand all that information before you even determine, playing a golfer or not. I think that's just fool's gold, and it's because, let's just face it, most of the people in this DFS industry are bettors. They're not golfers. They're not golf pros. They're nothing like that sort. They just use what logically makes sense to them, which if they were explained this, they would understand it doesn't make sense logically whatsoever. So just keep that in mind. And then also fade golfers versus draw golfers. Primarily, when you ever hit a fade, you put more backspin on it than you do a draw. It's incorrect to say draw puts topspin on it, because then the ball wouldn't fly in the air. It just has less spin than a fade does. So if you really want to target golfers, target those that hit a draw, just because you can pierce through the wind a little bit better than you can with a fade. And that's all I have really on that. So let's go ahead. Let's get into this. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go right into past optimal lineups. And we're going to start with 2018. I'm going to fly through this. We spent about 15 minutes, 16 minutes on all that stuff. So let's cruise through this, try to keep it on a 30. In 2018, your optimal lineup left $300 on the table, and it used 2 10K and above golfers, 2 7K golfers, and 2 6K golfers. So that's your stars and scrubs lineup. In 2019, we left $500 on the table, and we used 2 10K golfers, 2 7K golfers, and 2 6K golfers to get the optimal lineup. So once again, your stars and scrubs approach. In 2020, however, we left $300 on the table, and it was a bit more traditional. It was a 10K, 9K, 8K, 7, 6, 6. Now, you might be asking me like, well, that's not traditional. Like, isn't a 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 a traditional? Yes, absolutely. But the second most frequent salary constructed lineup is a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6 for optimal lineups. It's like a 12% clip or something like that, so it's not super prevalent, whereas your 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 is like a 24% clip. But still, obviously you see it here. And then in 2021, we actually left $3,400 on the table and used a 9K, an 8K, 7, 7, 6, 6. Not very traditional, and I don't advocate for that. Don't leave money on the table. It makes lineup building so much more difficult. Try to get as close to 50,000 as you possibly can. As you can see, your GPP winning lineup used up all 50, but even a realistic optimal that still beats the GPP and gets close to 50, that was doable this week. And that one used an 11K, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6. So 2021, 2020, you had that 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6. In 2018 and 2019, you had the 10, 10, 7, 7, 6, 6. So either way, you're playing a 10K and you're playing 2 6Ks. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen this week, but obviously you've seen past optimal lineups do that. Now, to further dig into this, let's go into the bucket system, which if you're new to the channel and you have no idea what this is, well, first of all, welcome. But secondly, it's just a way to analyze the top 10 or each top 10 of this tournament dating back to 2013. And it helps us understand which stats really matter and which ones don't. Does missing a cut last week really matter? Yes, no. The bucket system will figure that out. So I have 6 stat categories I talk about. We talk about last year's stats, last week's stats, course history, recent form, salaries, and strokes gained stats. We're going to start with salaries, but before we do, I want to let you guys know I made an update to how this looks. Whereas prior to today, prior to this video, and prior to videos in the future, what I would do is I would rank each of these buckets, because there's 6 buckets in each of these stat categories. I'd rank each of these buckets based off the frequency it finished inside the top 10. So if we look at the numbers here, obviously 29 is our highest number. That would get the number 1 rank. So your last year did not plays would be ranked number 1, and this would be your number 1 bucket for last year buckets. I've decided to change that logic, and I think this is going to help just me talk to you guys about it, like explain it to you guys, as well as I'm finding out putting this into a database, it's going to be much simpler to do it this way as well. Because now we can identify bucket 1 with your 1 to 20 range. And that'll apply for all of the buckets, for all the stats that I cover. And it's going to be top to bottom. It also works with my optimizer because that's also how it looks in the optimizer with the bucket configuration. So I can use all of this to my advantage. So that's the big update that I made. Hopefully you guys didn't get too used to it last time, or the way I did it before, and you're able to adjust. But I just wanted to throw that out there first. Now, when it comes to salaries, what we're seeing with the bucket system, first of all, what I like to look at is the projections. The projections kind of give us a good idea of which of these salaries are going to show up inside the top 10. Salary ranges, basically. And the projections really look at, the success rate, how often out of, the total number of golfers that that fall under this bucket over the last 4 years, because that's as long as salaries go back. Which of these buckets, or how frequently do they finish inside the top 10? Well, for your 10Ks, it's a 34% clip. That's really high. I have not seen, it's one of the highest I've seen in a long time. I don't really recall. I think maybe one was in the 40s. I just don't remember where or when I saw it, but this is still pretty high. And when you look at the projections, we're projecting 1 to 3 golfers to finish inside the top 10. You can see how many we see on average in this bucket. So 4.5, we have 5 this year. We have 67 points that go towards strength of field applied to this bucket as well. So the golfers in here make up of 67 of the strength of field points. Remember, it's 224. So that comes out to be about 30%. That's why the projections are so high, and that's also why I think you're going to want a 10K golfer anyways. It just rates out, just through historical stats as well as what we have in the field this week. And the rest of the buckets here, like 9 and 8K, there's a possibility we see 0 inside the top 10. It's not a high likelihood. I usually like to take the difference of this number and 1. So like 0.84, to me, it's like 84 out of 100. That means like there's a 16% chance. Maybe that's not the right way to look at it, but I look at it like there's a 16% chance 0 golfers from the 9K range finish inside the top 10. Probably not the right way to look at it. I should probably divide it by a different number, but just letting you guys know there's a small chance that 0 do show up inside the top 10. Same applies for the 8K range, but the only difference is we've seen 1 8K golfer inside the top 10 every single year, at least 1. So take that for what it's worth. Your 7K range is where you're going to probably, find most of your success when building lineups. If you can get the right 7K golfers, that's all that's going to matter. That and a 6K golfer, obviously, but I'm projecting somewhere between 1 to 3. Now, every single year, we've seen at least 3 inside the top 10, but not in the optimal lineup. Like, we've never seen more than 2. Now, that can change. Obviously, I'm projecting up to 3. We could probably have 3 golfers that make the optimal lineup from the 7K range. So just take that into account. And then your 6Ks, they're both very volatile. Obviously, that's why they're in the 6K range. But we do see at least 1 inside the optimal lineup every single year from that high 6K range. Remember, that's $6,500 and above. So what I'm seeing, we already went through past optimal lineups. We're kind of looking at the buckets with the golfers in the field this week. That 10, having a 10K golfer and maybe 2 7s and a 6 looks pretty good. And then you just fill in the rest with whatever works. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards right now. Now, when we look at last year buckets, I'm going to actually, no. We're going to go course history, recent form, last year, last week, and then strokes gained buckets. So course history. Does having good course history here matter? Well, success rate shows that it's one of the higher buckets, but because we only have 2 golfers in that bucket this year, it might not even matter. With those 2 golfers, we're projecting somewhere between 0 to 1 of them being inside the top 10, not at a high clip. And if you want to see who those golfers are, it shouldn't be a surprise. If I sort this way, it's Tommy Fleetwood and Sung J M. So how I look at this, are those golfers good enough to both finish inside the top 10? Yeah, of course. That would then, my projections would then be incorrect. But the bucket projections have been 94% correct almost every single week. So if we're only seeing somewhere between 0 to 1, or even if one only finishes inside the optimal lineup, let's put it this way. If both finish inside the top 10, that's good, right? But at their price tag, one is $9,900 and one's $11,000. At their price tag, if they don't finish inside the top 5, that's not good enough. Like, it's not going to pay off their salary very well. And that's where I'm looking at the optimal lineup buckets. We only see a max of 1, any given year. And obviously we've seen up to 0. So perhaps we fade Sung Jae and Tommy, or if we do play either of them, we just play 1 and we don't play 2. That's kind of how I'm looking at. You can kind of see how it shakes up for the rest of the buckets. Not quite 1 for the maximum projection of that 20 to 40 range. We have 16 golfers in that bucket this year, where we usually see 20. Kind of a high frequency rate of finishing inside the top 10, and we've seen up to 3 inside the optimal lineup before. So it's possible we'll get golfers here despite not having good projections. By the way, there are also 4 golfers yet to be added to this field. That might bump this one up to 1.01, which then we would project up to 2, because again, we always round up. Gives us a little bit of that cushion that we need. So you could almost look at this 0 to 2. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we could just do it anyways. 0 to 2. Course history 3 is probably where you want to live, and that's that 40 to 60 average finishing position dating back to 2013. Not all golfers even golfed in 2013 or 2014 or 2015, but I think you're going to get a lot of them from 2016 and on. And you can look at these stats. Looks like it's a high volume driven bucket, so 55 golfers in that bucket this week. Good luck finding the right, probably 3 golfers. I'm projecting somewhere between 2 to 5. We've only seen a max of 2 in the optimal lineup, and a minimum of 1, meaning we've seen at least 1 every single year. And you can see how the rest of the buckets shake out. 60 to 80 range, 80 plus, and did not play. I'm not going to talk about every bucket for each of these stats, just helping you understand how to look at it. Recent form, 1s, your 1 to 20 range. We have 3 in that bucket this year. And guess what? We're projecting somewhere between 0 to 2. So let's take a look at who those guys are. So we have, are we looking at recent form? Did I look at that right? Recent form. What's wrong with this number? 1 to 20. AB 84. Did we mess up? 90 D and G. Oh gosh, I'm looking at last year. Come on, why didn't any of you guys say anything to me? I'm sure you probably were yelling at your screen like, dude. Okay, there's our 3 right here. Neiman, Oosthuizen, and Horschel. So you can see Neiman just won the tournament last week. Oosthuizen and Horschel did not play last week, which is actually pretty good for them. That's a good stat to have when we get into last week's stats. Neiman could withdraw. He could. Won a big tournament, Tigers tournament. He might party a little too hard. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. I think I'm probably, if he does play, I'm probably, I probably just play him sparingly. Like, I'm not going to, I always create unique lineups. So with Neiman, I don't think he's going to ever be over 16% owned for me. I'm probably going to own him like 10%. And if I were to look at these buckets, which, The projection's 0.65 to 1.09, but it's 0 to 2, obviously, when we round up and we round down. I probably take the average number here, and that's 0.87. So 87% of my lineups will have at least one of these guys in them. I think that means, gosh, first of all, let's talk about something real quick, okay? Neiman could withdraw because he won last week. Oosthuizen could withdraw because he's got a bad back. I mean, he's done this in the past. He can certainly do it again. Meaning, I don't trust this bucket all that much. Like, yeah, I do like Billy Horschel, but if these two golfers are not even living up to their expectations, or if they end up withdrawing, this bucket no longer becomes a certainty. It becomes like 0 to 1, meaning it's just less likely that Billy Horschel is going to triumph and finish inside the top 10 or even in the optimal lineup. So I have a lot of questions with that bucket. Not sure if I'm going to go there, but hey, you saw you can go up to 0 to 2. Choose 0 to 2 of those guys. Don't choose all 3. That'd be the wrong thing to do. Everything else is pretty equal though. So if you come in with some okay recent form, like 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, again, I'm looking at the last 7 weeks prior to this tournament. So really the last 8 weeks, I guess, if you're being technical. Having some decent recent form is okay, but also if you're a European golfer and you haven't been on the PGA Tour yet, you fall under the 6 bucket. That's not a bad bucket to be either. 0 to 2 is my projection here. So keep that all in mind, because I don't look at European finishes or anything like that. Even if they played last week or 2 weeks ago, if they haven't been on the PGA Tour in the last 7 weeks, they're in this bucket. So just keep that in mind. Shoot, we're over 30 minutes. Dang it. When we look at last year's stats, nothing really stands out other than not playing. Did not plays and missed cuts. Those are the 2 buckets that show up more often than not inside the top 10 and are projected to be pretty decent. Now, your did not plays just have a large number, so that's very volume driven. But the success rates for all these other buckets aren't very good. So again, that's looking at every golfer that's ever been in this bucket dating back to 2013. And it's in this range, just so I don't confuse you guys. 8% is not a very high success rate. That's why you don't see very good projections, despite having a total that's really close to the average that you typically see. Nothing is really certain, but look at the missed cuts from last year. Minimum is 2, maximum is 3 for finishing in the optimal lineup. So definitely consider that. My projection is 1 to 3, so they do fall in there, and that definitely could be a possibility this week. The rest of the buckets are pretty, they don't look very good. So let's put it this way. If they're not top 20 this tournament, or if they didn't top 20 this tournament last year, or missed the cut, or just didn't play, I probably avoid them. And there aren't a lot of golfers to choose from. In those buckets, there's only 31 total. So how about this? Let's go into this really quick. I typically don't want to look at some of these golfers until tomorrow in the strategy video. But if we're looking at these recent form golfers, they would all be, oh, I'm sorry. We're looking at last week. Was it last week or last year? Such a bad short-term memory. Last year. We're looking at golfers right here. So Ricky Fowler, Bronson Burgoon, Pure Affi Barnrat. I'm just fading those golfers, period. Joaquin Neiman would be a consideration. Same with Chris Kirk. So how I'd look at this, since that bucket is right here, I'm only projecting 0 to 1 for golfers here. That 20 to 40 range. That tells me I only want to play one golfer pretty much at most in this whole range, which it consists of Joaquin Neiman, Chris Kirk, like notable names I'm saying, Johnny Vegas, Mackenzie Hughes, and Shane Lowry. So I wouldn't create a lineup with those, with more than 2 of these guys for sure, but I'm probably only going to select one if I'm going to select a golfer from this range, which I will, but it'll be sparingly. And then the same applies for this 40 to 60 range. What was the number we have there? Yeah, this is even less than the last one. And our most notable guy is Alex Noren. We also have Keith Mitchell here. And that's really it. Everyone else is in the 6K range. But Keith Mitchell and Alex Noren, I'm probably not going to pair those guys up together when I build my lineups. This is why I like the bucket system. Helps us figure out how to narrow down, first of all, player pools, but our decisions when creating lineups. And then moving on from there, we're going to go to last week. Our last week buckets. Did it matter playing last week or having the week off was more beneficial? By far, having the week off was the most beneficial. We do have 96 golfers in that bucket. So I guess, yeah, curb your, I don't know, 96 golfers who did not play last week. On average, we see usually 59. So this is way over that number. Projections somewhere between 3 to 6. So it's a very high volume driven bucket. We've never seen more than 4 in the optimal lineup, but we've seen at least 1 every single year. So it's definitely a bucket you want to select from. But man, 96? Jeez. I just want to confirm that number. Well, 92. I don't know who the other 4 golfers are going to be. Either way, it doesn't matter. Those 4 golfers don't really, the 4 no-namers don't really account for much. But yeah, what we have 6 golfers who topped 20 last week. So if you're on someone like Amito Pereira, I'm really only projecting somewhere between 0 to 1 finishing inside the top 10. We've never seen more than 2 in the optimal lineup, and we've always seen 1 inside the top 10. So it's definitely something to consider. But we only have 6 this week, whereas we usually see 16 up to, well, 15. So that bucket's small. All of these are considerably smaller. Not maybe considerably, but quite a bit smaller than the average is. So yeah, there's some notable names here. Neiman, Cameron Young, Jones, Pereira. I like Taylor Moore, but you know, maybe not worthwhile. Sung J M is in this bucket here. Russell Knox. Jeez. And neither one of these are, you know, more than 1 for their max projection. So again, helps you build your lineups. This is a good thing to look at when considering which golfers you want. So if you're like, to me, if you're on someone like Mito, you just get rid of everyone right here. You don't play Mito with any of these guys unless you want to take that risk. Then so be it. Same goes like if you want Sung Jae, don't pair him up with anybody here. You know, I mean, most of those will probably be easy to do. So it almost feels like Sung Jae is a good one to select from, and then pairing them up with someone up here. But that's just my opinion when I look at the bucket system. The biggest bucket is did not plays. Missed cuts actually show up. You want somewhere between 0 to 2. But we've only seen 1 at most in the optimal lineup. So keep that into consideration. But that's not a bad bucket to select from either. And then we're going to round this out by looking at strokes gain stats. So I've toyed around with the idea of adding another column here. Actually, I don't know how I would do this. I might create 2 strokes gain buckets. No, that wouldn't work either. What I want to do is add something to show you positive approach stats versus negative approach stats. Because how I have it right now is all stats positive are your strokes gain 1. Positive off the tee, positive putting that are not in strokes gain 1 go into strokes gain 2 because you have a negative around the green or a negative approach stat. And then we're looking at negative putting stats in strokes gain 3, but we're looking at positive off the tee. Negative off the tee, positive putting for your strokes gain 4. Negative off the tee, negative putting for your strokes gain 5, and then strokes gain 6 are just no strokes gain stats. And all these buckets in between can have negative approach or negative around the green or both. They can have any one of those 3. But obviously, if you had positive of those 2 stats, well, I shouldn't even say it that way because obviously you can see it doesn't matter. They can have. I'm sorry, back up. Only the strokes gain 2 would have negative approach or negative around the green. or both. These can have positive or negative stats in between, because the only ones that it's really caring about is looking at positive off the tee and negative putting, or negative off the tee, positive putting, so on and so forth. You get the idea. And I put it this way because I'm showing you your best off the tee guys, and then your worst off the tee guys. All strokes gained stats begin with off the tee, unless you're on a par 3, then it's approach stat. But either way, they all, 14 of your shots will start off the tee. So to me, it just makes more sense to look at off the tee, because that really drives approach stats more than you actually think. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And then obviously positive putting to me is just, you add it all together, you're going to get a better all-around golfer. That was a long explanation, didn't need to get into it, but you can see all the projections here. It's pretty even. You want 0 to 1 just about of all buckets. Oh, these in the middle. Strokes gained 2, strokes gained 3, strokes gained 4. You want 1 to 3. So that's what these look like right here. The other ones are 0 to 2, 0 to 2, and then strokes gained 1. We only have 1, or strokes gained 6. We only have 1 golfer in there. You don't have to worry about that guy. Who is it actually? Is that Tommy? No. Right here. Nikolai Højgaard hasn't had a PGA Tour event that had strokes gained stats over last year. So that is the only guy there. So actually, maybe you do want to play him, because that's a pretty okay golfer to select from. But either way, it looks like a max of 1 for each of these guys for strokes gained 1 through 6 or 1 through 5. And then mix and match maybe 2 of the guys in the middle, 2 of the buckets in the middle. And then there you have it. So that's all I have. This one ran a lot longer than I thought, and that was primarily because of the course information I talked about earlier. Of course, I probably could have done the buckets here a little bit quicker. But yeah, I mean, don't worry about low ball hitters. Like, unless you have a good breakdown as to why you'd want to select a low ball hitter, like a particular person. It's just, those are too elementary of stats to really consider. Like, I don't mean to make fun of anybody who really cares about those stats, because obviously some of those are going to show up inside the top 10. But when it just comes to how well someone can score at a golf course with it being windy, has very little relevance to how low they hit the ball in general. Like, this is going to be a circumstantial, week where high ball hitters will also be hitting the ball low. And you're going to see that if you track Apex stats, I'm sure most people are going to be hitting the ball low, which is just going to blow your mind if that's something you actually look at when it comes to Apex stats. Like, if you're avoiding high ball hitters just because of they're a high ball hitter when there's no wind, you're going to do yourself a big disservice by just fading them because of that. So I wouldn't consider it. Don't even look into it. I can't stand people that use that, especially prevalent people that have a wide or a large audience. That stuff just doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to do any rant tonight. I kind of did it earlier in that course information. 40 minutes is long enough. So with that being said, I just remind you guys, let me put on the screen. If you're not yet subscribed, do so. You can win up to $20 this week. And you get a free entry every single time you comment on one of my videos. Not every single time. Every unique video you comment on, you get 1 free entry. So preview video, strategy video, prize picks video. If you comment on all 3 of those, you get 3 entries. And again, if you retweet the videos I post on Twitter, you will get an additional 1 to make 4. So you'll have 4 entries to try to win $20 Sunday night. Again, if we hit 320 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And have to remind you guys, prize picks, you'll get you'll get $20 free from me if you sign up using my promo code SweetSpot. That's all I got for you. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.